We are and always will be ignorant. No amount of knowledge, control, or effort will ever allow us to escape this, and the harder we fight it, the more lost we become. You will never find peace until you recognize that ignorance is not a problem to solve, but a condition to accept. Welcome to Progress Theory. My name is Garrett Stevenson, and in this episode, I'm going to be discussing the various ways and reasons in which we are cursed by ignorance and strategies for effectively making peace with this reality. I have spent most of my life desperately trying to outrun the feeling that I have no idea what is going on. I have obsessively craved knowledge and growth and self-development because I thought that if I just learned enough and I found the right teachings, that I would eventually see the world clearly and I could develop real control over myself and the outcomes I experience in my life. I think a lot of us live this way. It is very human. As humans, we're born into a massive universe with no sort of manual on how anything works. We are taught by whoever we happen to be born to, who are other humans, just as confused and scared and ignorant as we are. And the teachings we are exposed to are often somewhat, if not completely, wrong. As human beings, we are fragile creatures who are destined to die, but who are wired to crave survival. And we have a deep desire for meaning and control, yet we reside in a universe which is seemingly devoid of either. It makes sense that we try to shield ourselves from our own ignorance, because it is a reminder of how powerlessness and fragile we really are. Most people do not like feeling powerless or fragile. They make us feel very scared and uncomfortable and eliminate any subtle sense of control that we think we have. So we hate the reminder. We hate our own ignorance. Our natural proclivity is to resist it and to fight against it. I think it seems like many people just resist it their entire lives. And there are different strategies for doing so. One of the most pervasive that stands out to me is denial and avoidance. A lot of people, it seems, try to shrink down their world and make it as small as possible so that they can understand it. They feel like they can control it, and they just avoid anything that reveals or highlights their own ignorance. And this is somewhat effective. When you make your world very tiny, when you shut yourself off from any ideas or places or activities or people who make you feel like you don't understand the world around you, and you never expose yourself to thoughts or ideas that contradict your own, it's somewhat effective. It gives you a feeling of safety and comfort and control. Yet, you are ultimately completely sacrificing growth and exploration and opportunity to develop your understanding of reality. A somewhat opposite approach to dealing and fighting ignorance is fantasy and obsession. This is one that I personally have fallen victim to recurrently throughout my entire life. It's easy to fantasize about a future where our own ignorance and powerlessness is conquered through growth and expansion. This fantasy is a very powerful source of fuel, and it creates a drive that almost becomes addictive and compulsive, a deep drive to learn and grow and improve ourselves and our understanding of the world around us, because this allows us to maintain the illusion that we are capable of having control and power and overcoming our own fragility. And the fantasy tells us that if we just learn enough, if we just grow enough, if we find the right information and put it all together, then we will eventually escape our ignorance. And it is extremely intoxicating. At least for me, it was. It provides a sense of control and comfort and power that allows us to escape the fact that we will never have control. We will never be anything other than ignorant. And so while the fantasy is intoxicating, it can never be actualized. The truth that I'm learning to accept is no matter how much we fight our own ignorance, we will never break free. And there are three primary reasons for this. The first reason is that our perspective on the universe is incredibly limited. To highlight this, to demonstrate it, I think it's very useful to really zoom out the scale on which we look at our lives. The entirety of the human experience, the lives of every human being that's ever lived so far, has existed on this one small planet in one relatively small solar system that exists in a galaxy full of billions, if not hundreds of billions, of solar systems. And this galaxy we exist in resides in a universe full of hundreds of billions of galaxies. The timeline of our entire species has existed over the course of, very optimistically, at best, 500,000 years. Realistically, not even close to that, but the first thing that even remotely resembles our species today might have appeared 500,000 years ago. That is 500,000 years in comparison to the timeline of our universe, which is over 13 billion years old. These estimations of our universe's size are conservative. The estimations of our timeline within the universe are pretty liberal and optimistic. We are so tiny, and we completely lack the capacity and the ability to know the real numbers. The actual scope of our universe may be far greater than this. And based on these estimations, the conglomerative perspective of our entire species is so microscopic in proportion to the scope of the universe as a whole that it might as well be nothing. This is looking at our species. Unfortunately, we do not have the perspective of our species. Our own personal perspective is far smaller. We experience personally at most 100 years of the 500,000 that our species has been around. And even the most traveled and experienced of us, the people who try to expose themselves to as much of the world as they possibly can in their lifetime, experience a fraction of 1% of this tiny planet. The overall perspective of our species as a whole is a tiny fraction compared to all of space-time. And our own individual perspective is an even tinier fraction of this tiny fraction. The second reason that ignorance is completely inescapable is that our individual perception of reality is entirely subjective. None of us see objective reality. We don't experience it directly. From what I understand, we experience a reconstruction of objective reality that is built on top of our own beliefs. And one of the most frustrating parts of the human experience is that the beliefs we hold very dearly, in which we are certain of, are often completely inaccurate. Our foundational beliefs, the things that we build our whole perception of reality on, don't really align with the true nature of reality that often. To make this clear, one of the things that made this very obvious to me, there are people who are so completely certain that the Christian God exists and we live in a universe that is controlled by him. And there are also people who are so completely certain that we live in an atheistic universe. There's no God in control of anything. It's all naturalistic, materialistic processes. These are completely contradictory views for the nature of reality, and yet you'll find people who believe in them so completely and who see the world through that lens. If people are able to completely believe in absolutely contradictory belief systems, it's proof that it does not matter how certain we are, our beliefs about the world can be entirely inaccurate. Even those with the luxury of being exposed to and developing the most accurate belief systems will still have clear areas of misalignment. The lens in which they see the world is less distorted, but it's still distorted. A thought experiment to make this more clear. If 80% of our beliefs align with reality, that means 20% of them don't. And the inaccuracies of this 20% could cause misinterpretations of our experiences that will lead to completely incorrect conclusions. And over time, the compounding effect of 20% of our conclusions being entirely inaccurate will result in huge discrepancies between what we believe and what is actually objectively true. It seems to me that gaining wisdom requires constant critical analysis of our own beliefs and a willingness to let them go very quickly when the evidence tells us we should. And no matter how much we commit to this process, it will never end. It will never be complete. We will never actually have a clear, objective view of reality. Our perception is destined to be subjective and flawed. And the final reason that ignorance is inescapable is that we are only granted access to one singular perspective that is blinded by our animalistic impulses and our selfish biases. There are currently around 8 billion human beings alive. That is 8 billion perspectives shaped by a very unique sequence of experiences and interpretations of those experiences. Every year we live, there exist 8 billion years of collective human experiences that are shaping our perceptions of reality. And we get access to none of it. We only get our one sequence. In just having one, we are completely cursed by biases and selfish desires. When we only see the world through our one lens, it is impossible not to see it and judge it by how it impacts us. We naturally start to judge other people in the world around us based on how they align with our own expectations of how reality should be and our own desires for the reality we want to live in. Worse, our hardware is not perfect. We evolved based on the same process and with the same underlying foundational hardware as every other every other animal alive today. We developed emotions and cognitive wiring and cognitive limitations that benefited our survival in our early environment of origin, but which hinder our ability to see reality clearly. Emotions are very useful. They help prompt behavior that benefits our survival. It creates a lot of drive and motivation, but they often cloud our judgment and our perception of the world around us, and they cause us to make very irrational decisions. We have a lot of cognitive distortions and common thinking patterns and thinking errors that cause huge mistakes. And these limitations were necessary based on the energy resources we had and the hardware that we had to evolve from. But they still cause huge errors and destroy our ability to see things clearly in a lot of situations. And unless we eventually develop technology that allows us to transfer our consciousness to improved hardware, we will always be limited by our animalistic nature. Unless we develop technology that allows us to connect our conscious experiences amongst each other, we will always be confined to our singular experiential sequence. The combination of our limited spatial and temporal experience, subjective perception of reality, and animalistic selfish biases all but guarantee that the scope of our perspective will always be so incredibly microscopic and flawed that we may as well be completely blind. Given perspective is the prerequisite for knowledge and wisdom, our inherent lack of it ensures that we will forever be ignorant beings. For every reason that we just discussed, ignorance is inherent a part of the human experience as death, at least at this point in our timeline. One cannot escape something that is inherently inescapable. Trying to do so does nothing more than guarantee disappointment, dissatisfaction, and frustration. There is absolutely no value in fighting something that you cannot change. I think a fantastic narrative that demonstrates this point effectively is that of the Buddhist metaphor for the two arrows. In this metaphor, the first arrow is the intrinsic pain that comes with our existence. It's completely unavoidable. No matter what we do, no matter what amount of luck we receive, we will all feel physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain. We will face circumstances that cause negative emotions and that cause sensory pain and dissatisfaction. Cannot escape it. The second arrow is suffering. And suffering stems from our resistance to our pain and the stories we tell ourselves about it. The second arrow is entirely avoidable. It results from our attachment to the outcomes we want to experience, our attachment to how we think reality should be, and our expectations for the world around us. I don't think someone needs to believe in a school of thought's metaphysical claims about reality to derive value from its teachings. I'm not a Buddhist. Frankly, I don't know what its metaphysical teachings are because I don't see that much value in learning them. But I think there's immense value to be found in the school of thought's teachings about how to improve one's well-being and free yourself of unnecessary suffering. The inherent ignorance we are all trapped in is the first arrow. It's inescapable. Our resistance to this inescapable ignorance is the second arrow. Our expectations for reality and the stories we tell ourselves about our own ignorance and its impact on our lives are what create a majority of the unnecessary stress and suffering we experience. The ultimate solution to the problem of human ignorance is not fighting it. It is deliberate, radical acceptance. If you can't change something, the best you can do is change your perspective on that thing. Finding genuine peace with your own intrinsic ignorance, and even learning to find humor in it when it causes catastrophic difficulty, our failures, will alleviate much of the suffering and discomfort that it causes. This sounds great in theory. Saying, yeah, just accept your own ignorance. Yeah, that sounds like it would work, but requires much more tangible action to actually incorporate into your life. What the actual practice of acceptance looks like, from my understanding, requires mindful awareness and repeated effort over time. And this repeated effort is an attempt to consciously reframe your thoughts and your emotions over time to create an unconscious foundational sense of acceptance. For example, when you feel a strong negative emotion due to the presence of your own ignorance or the mistakes and failures that it causes in your life, become mindful of the emotion you're feeling and reframe it. Say something along the lines of, failure is inevitable given the ignorance that is inherent to the human experience. I fully accept this ignorance and the failures it causes, and I find joy and peace in the human experience, even when I am failing. Another example, when you notice you are telling yourself a story about your own ignorance and why it is dissatisfactory or unacceptable, become mindful of the story, of the thought pattern, and reframe it. Something along the lines of, my ignorance is not the problem. my resistance to this ignorance is. Have fully accepted my own ignorance, and I find joy and peace in the human experience despite it. The last episode of this podcast was centered around the idea that balance is a core part of creating and enhancing well-being in someone's life. This type of acceptance requires balance. Too much acceptance, or what people see as acceptance, can quickly create unsatisfying and unfulfilling complacency. I do not think that acceptance of our ignorance means that we give up our efforts to grow, learn, and increase our understanding of ourselves and the universe. Just because ignorance is inescapable doesn't mean that we can't significantly improve our own wisdom and knowledge. And I think there are two levels to which we can see this being true. The first is societally. When looking at the human species as a whole, we have been and always will be enshrouded in ignorance. We don't know how the universe works. We have no idea why the universe is here. We don't even have a clue on how to effectively leave our tiny planet. We continuously harm our own species for our own personal gain. We destroy our environment for short-term gratification. We very easily fall into addictive behaviors that destroy our own lives and lives of the people around us. And we constantly engage in pointless conflicts within our own species that cause severe unnecessary pain and suffering to millions of people. Ignorance is very clearly rampant in society. Yet, over the course of our entire timeline, huge progress has clearly been made. We started off as tiny tribes with quite literally zero understanding of ourselves or the world around us. And over a relatively short time span, we have grown into huge, ginormous civilizations who can actively manipulate the world around us on a massive scale. Through our own efforts to improve our own lives and change the world to align more with our own expectations and desires, the general average quality of life for our species has grown exponentially. Our understanding of reality has steadily improved, and the suffering that is experienced as a whole has been reduced continuously as a result of our quest to conquer our own ignorance. On an individual level, every human being alive starts as a blank slate with basic genetic programming. This is an oversimplification, but it is largely true. And our early environment absolutely plays a very deterministic role in who we end up becoming. But over the course of human history, we have seen countless individuals start from nothing and become someone who changes society due to their efforts to conquer their own ignorance. For a few examples, there are people who started as this blank slate and through their efforts to conquer their own ignorance became amazing scientists who created revolutionary theories about the universe that shaped how we see reality. There are engineers who started as blank slates and through their own efforts and attempts to grow became creators of inventions who are used by billions of people. And there are entrepreneurs who started as the same blank slate and through their own efforts to grow and understand themselves and the world became creators of massive organizations that impact millions of lives. These are a couple examples. There are countless fields of world-changing expertise. And every one of these world shapers died an ignorant being. The sum of what they knew was completely dwarfed by the sum of what they didn't. Yet despite this, they dramatically improved their own lives and the lives of other people over the course of their lifetime. Just because our ignorance cannot be overcome does not mean that we can't make massive progress. We can create far more fulfillment joy and peace in our own lives and the lives of other people around us by striving to increase our understanding of ourselves and our world. Overall, there is massive joy and purpose to be found in learning and developing our understanding of reality, as long as we do so with the acceptance that reducing our ignorance is an ongoing process, and the overall conglomeration of what we know will never compare to that of what we don't. Taking tangible steps to create this acceptance is a very active process that can greatly enhance our own well-being and improve our sense of inner peace. It will absolutely take effort, but that effort is worth it. This has been episode 5 of Progress Theory. To anyone who has made it this far in this episode, I appreciate you listening a lot. Your attention does mean a lot to me. This podcast and this company as a whole is absolutely in its infancy. The feedback and any sort of feedback is very exciting to me, very fulfilling and motivating to me. So if you listen to this and you found it interesting, you agreed with the ideas, I'd love to hear about it in a message or a comment. If you disagree, I would also love to hear about it. Discourse and conversation is very exciting. That's a huge source of progress in itself. So if you disagreed with what I had to say, I'd love to talk as well. The next episode will be centered around finding meaning in a seemingly meaningless universe. It is a topic that is very interesting to me. I'm very excited to make the episode. If you enjoyed this episode or that idea stands out to you, feel free to subscribe in order to keep up with the future installments. And as always, I wish you all the growth and progress that you are trying to make in your life. And I will see you in the next episode.